Today's Saturday, it's the 8th of March, it's 2025, and I'm in my new studio. I'm actually in a hotel in Palma, and sitting on the terrace here overlooking the sea. It's a bit of a grey day, but I've got some news and a little bit of news update, and I did one on ETIAS and the entry-exit system, the EES, a few weeks ago, and things were not very clear then. I'm not sure they're a lot clearer now, but at least we've got some almost definitive dates being mentioned by the authorities that are responsible for them. So first of all, the entry-exit system. This is the system where they're going to take your photograph, your fingerprints when you enter the European Schengen area, and that is due to come into operation in October of this year. What does it mean? Well, it means as an outsider from outside of the European Union, outside particularly the Schengen area of the European Union, when you enter for the first time, they will have your photograph taken and they will take your fingerprints and they will collect information from your passport. That will all get stored and kept, and every time you then cross a border which leaves the Schengen area, that information will be again stored. So when you come in the second time, you will only have probably your photograph taken. Does it mean for you, what does it mean? Really, hopefully not very much of a change. I think in airports like Palma, they're already geared up for it, and it should not make any difference at all. It says October, but it says it's going to be a phased introduction over 6 months, and that's really to allow places like ports, particularly the port of Dover, I would imagine, which has a lot of traffic coming through it with coach loads of people, and that might really slow things up. So they've got a 6-month implementation period set up. The one that's more restrictive and going to take a little bit of thought and a little bit of setting up by both the authorities and the travellers is ETIAS, this visa waiver. It's not a visa, and some people seem to be getting it confused. It's for people who don't need a visa to enter the European Union Schengen area for short stays. If you're going to come for a long stay, you're going to still need a visa, but if it's a short stay, you're on holiday, it's not going to exceed that 90-day limit in a 180-day period, then you're going to need this ETIAS. It's a visa waiver that is applied for online, and that's not expected to be introduced until October of 2026. So it's next year and after the summer season. So it doesn't look as though it's going to be affecting anyone for a very long time. So just to sum that up, the entry-exit system, this electronic system as you cross the border, that's going to come in October, and it's going to be phased in, so it won't be in everywhere in October. And ETIAS, well, forget about that now. It looks as though it's going to be introduced in the 3rd or 4th quarter of 2026. So a long way away. The other thing that's been in the news as far as tourists are concerned are some of the local government's proposals. Now, these are very much local government as opposed to the central government in Madrid. So we're talking about the Balearic Islands, and I'm talking about Mallorca in particular. And they proposed last week that they were going to introduce some new laws to limit the number of tourists. Unfortunately, this gets misrepresented when it reaches the press, particularly in the UK. They take their information from our local newspaper, the Majorca Daily Bulletin, and then they sort of say it's only applying to the British. Well, it doesn't. It applies to anybody who's coming from outside of Europe and coming for a holiday to Mallorca. And it's not really just them. It applies to Spanish people, in fact, coming to Mallorca. We can't just keep accepting more and more tourists to the island. There comes a point when you reach this saturation point, and many people in Mallorca seem to think that that point's already been reached. The hoteliers say no. The hoteliers are saying no, there's plenty of room, and well, it's July and August, I imagine, when the islands become really full of people. So what are these new rules? Well, they said a couple of weeks ago that they were going to announce them last week, and that was postponed to this week, and now we do have some concrete proposals, and the government agrees to ban tourist apartments, to raise the eco tax, that's the tourist tax that you pay when you get to your hotel, and I think that usually has to be paid in cash. We've just arrived at this hotel and nobody's asked us for any tourist tax, so I don't know how it's been applied to us. We are in a low season and maybe it hasn't even started yet. Cruise passengers, they're going to be charged a tax, and that's going to be increased. And then there's some more taxes that are going to be applied to car rentals. So this was announced on Thursday, and it's an announcement. It's not become law yet. The government here in Mallorca doesn't have a majority, so they've got to convince the other political parties to agree to this before these rules and laws can actually be passed. So the ban on tourism apartments and the creation of a new tax for temporary rental cars and an increase in the eco tax during the high tourist season, especially for cruises, are the proposals to curb the impact of tourism and to tackle the problems. So this is announced on Friday. It came out, and the measures contain the tourism rules, which will formally be presented to the Parliament here. The regional government's planning to ban the granting of new rental licenses for tourist apartments. It's already very difficult to get a license for a tourist apartment. They're now going to propose that they ban them altogether, and any that are coming up for renewal, they're going to make it much more difficult for them to be renewed. They're going to be putting more restrictions on them. They're going to be raising the fine for illegal tourist accommodation by 25% to 500,000 euros. That's €500,000 is the potential fine that you can get. That fine can be reduced by 80%. That's a bit of an incentive, isn't it? If the owners then decide to change the property from tourist to rental property for social housing for people to live in, and then it's going to have to be at a limited price. A new tax is being created on rental cars, or that's the proposal, that circulate for less than 6 months on the island, and that depends on their emissions, but will be between 30 and 80 euros. There's another tax that's being proposed for vehicles. The government's also considering creating a new tax on holiday vehicles to offset the impact of their emissions. And these are vehicles that are visiting the island. So if somebody from the mainland drives over to Majorca, then there's a new tax which is going to vary between 35 and 150 euros. So people from the mainland bringing their cars here face a potential new tax. I will say again that these are just proposals. They've got to be approved by the Parliament, and then they've got to be made into a law. The tourist tax, which tourists pay when they arrive at their hotel, it depends on the hotel number of stars, the quality of the hotel. So if you're in a 1-star hotel, it's lower than if you're in a 5-star, and that's going up from the present rate, which is 1 to 2.5 euros, to between 4 and 6 euros. This is per night in the high season. For cruise ships, at the moment there's a €2 per night stay or visit. They're only usually here for 1 day. Cruise ships, that's going to go up to 6 euros per stay. Residents of the Baleares, like us, we still have to pay the tourist tax. So us coming over here to Palma, I was expecting to have to pay the tourist tax, but I think we may actually fall into the very low season when we don't have to pay it. But there's a little bit of a concession here for Balearic Island residents. They can go on holiday and pay the tourist tax, but we should be able to claim it back on our income tax form. So when we do our Declaración de la Renta, we can claim back up to 250 euros in tourist tax. So that's a little bit of a benefit for us locals. They also promise to fight illegal tourism, so illegal tourist office. What they're suggesting here is that anyone that advertises a tourist rental, so when they put it onto booking.com or Airbnb, they must have the license number with the property so that they can be checked. It's going to be a very difficult one to police, I'm sure. So we'll see how this all goes, and I'm sure there's going to be more things coming up. One of them is about zones. They want to create zones where they are not going to allow any more tourist accommodation being built, and those zones, well, we'll see what happens with them and where they are when the different local governments, local municipalities suggest them. As soon as I get any more interesting information on this, I will put it out here. So I hope you found this interesting. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one. Bye for now.